Well, some new data compiled by Food Banks Canada now finds that almost 25% of Canadians are living in poverty. That is significantly higher than the 10% living below the poverty line. So for a closer look at this, we're joined live by Food Banks Canada Research Director Richard Materne. Richard, appreciate you joining us here. These are really concerning numbers because it's so much higher than what we initially thought. Is that because of your research methods, or is it because more people are just saying, hey, I'm in fact living in poverty? How has this been, these numbers arrived at?
So this is a new methodology. We used a methodology called the Material Deprivation Index, or the MDI for short. And what that is a way to measure poverty by looking at people's standard of living. And it's been used in Europe for many decades. So we did a Made in Canada deprivation index, and we developed one. And based on the survey that we conducted, if people were missing 2 or more out of 11 essential items, which the majority of Canadians deemed essential, they're very likely to be living at a poverty level standard of living.
What are those items, Richard, the main ones that people are missing, the sort of 2 of 11 you were highlighting there?
So they include having appropriate clothes for job interviews. They include being able to get around your community. Can you see the dentist? Are you able to eat a meal with protein every other day? So pretty straightforward things that the majority of Canadians think that people should have to have an acceptable standard of living in Canada. And this differs from our current poverty measure in that we're not looking at just income alone, but we're looking at what people can actually afford with the income they have. And there's many things that are impacting people's standard of living today, as many can imagine.
Yeah, looking at income is really an interesting way of doing it, because you're right, it doesn't seem to represent, depending on where you live, one number means one thing, but another place it means another. And incomes can only go so far these days, Richard. We've been talking and dealing so much with, the rising cost of living, whether it's rent, whether it's mortgages, whether it's food inflation here, all of these factors impacting this. Richard, I'm curious if you looked at these numbers in reverse and looked over the past 5 years, could you measure what the numbers would have been had you done this math, let's say 5 years ago as compared to now, or is this from now going forward?
So this study that we did is from now going forward, but the academic lead of the project, Duranda Naughton from the University of Ottawa, has done studies back looking at 2013 data, which shows still higher rates of poverty than what traditional income measures would show, like our current market basket measure. However, it's not as high as what you're seeing now. And so it's clear, and we're seeing that also on the ground with record-breaking food bank usage. We're seeing it with the official food insecurity stats being the highest they've ever been now. So all of these indicators are pointing to a direction that people are struggling with day-to-day expenses.
So Richard, what is your hope by putting out these numbers? That this is a wake-up call for governments? I mean, they should be alert to it, but what do you hope comes from this new research?
So we're looking at a material deprivation index can help us to design perhaps better poverty reduction programs. So, for instance, what our research is finding is that the majority of those living in poverty, according to our MDI, are working. And so programs that are addressing poverty that are not assisting people who are working will miss the mark. So part of our recommendation is not only for the government to include this measurement as an indicator among a range of portfolios to monitor their progress in poverty reduction, but also looking at programs that help people who are working to afford their day-to-day needs, expanding benefits like dental and drug coverage, and helping people regardless of income source, that right now many programs are restricted.
Okay, well, this is certainly a sobering set of numbers. That is Food Banks Canada Research Director Richard Materne. Richard, appreciate the time this morning. Thanks for highlighting this.
Thank you.